Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Show Up with Camron Gran. This week, we're going over Wise Mind. When are we in it? And what's the difference between Wise Mind and our emotional, rational mind? How can we tell the difference? By going over everything that Wanda Maximoff did wrong in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I just wanted to remind you guys that I'm just a friend going over different DBT skills that have helped me along my own mental health journey. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a guide showcasing the different tools and tricks that have helped me along the way. Let's dive right in. To start, I thought I'd give you guys a brief overview of the different mindsets. I'm going to start with our emotional mind. Typically, when you're in that mindset, you're ruled by your moods and feelings and urges. Like you do whatever you say or think without much thought and logic behind it, because you're too overwhelmed with what's going on inside to think about other people around you or the situation at hand, because you're going through too much at this present time. Now, our reasonable minds are when we're ruled by rules, facts, reason, logic, and pragmatics. They chose to put this box behind me on our reasonable mind because when we're in our reasonable mind, we go so far into only wanting things to be exactly how they are. It must line up correctly for our emotional side to not be triggered, where we've just shut off all emotion and we're just completely logic based. What your goal should be is to be in the between place, where you're halfway in your emotional side and halfway in your reasonable side. If you imagined a circle, they would both interlock, and in that middle section would be the wise mind, when you have logic and emotion kind of going together. That's wise mind. I'm going to be honest with you, wise mind probably will not be mentioned a lot with the term Wanda, but that's a whole other story that I could go into on a different channel, because I have some issues with this film because the logic of not only the character but kind of WandaVision kind of goes out the window for this film, but I'm going to try to roll with it. That's your overview, and with that, let's begin the actual movie. We are definitely going to be spoiling things as I break down these different DBT skills. I just wanted to say this as I stop at about 2 minutes in. This is the scene where America Chavez is with Doctor Strange and they're being pursued by this monster. As it looks like they're about to lose, this Doctor Strange thinks that the best logical thing to do is to take America's power because he thinks that he can wield it better than she can. Most people at first glance might just assume that Doctor Strange is the embodiment of reasonable mind and Wanda Maximoff is the embodiment of emotional mind. But over the course of this film, we actually find both characters traveling from both extreme sides into the middle wise mind. This Doctor Strange decides that because they're losing, the best thing that he could do is kill an innocent person because he thinks that he could wield her power better. And that's the one thing that I feel like is the flaw of Doctor Strange, is a lot of times he feels like he's the most reasonable and has the most logic of anybody out there. But if you've watched Endgame or any of the other films of Doctor Strange, he makes a lot of mistakes. This is a reasonable mind decision. He's taking out all the emotion, all the facts about this being a human life, strictly about, oh, we have to stop the multiverse from falling. And because of that, he's missing those things that you should stop and be like, oh, this is a person. How can we both escape this? I understand there's a creature in pursuit that wants her powers, and the things will be bad if the person actually gets them. This is an example of reasonable mind. It is not. Reasonable mind, you might sound like it's the goal. It can often lead you towards being either too harsh or too much in your own fight or flight to actually think through everything you choose to do rationally. We are 20 minutes in, and this is the scene where it starts off with a beautiful moment between Wanda and her two kids, just tucking them in bed, and you think it's going to be a happy memory, and then I won't spoil what happened in WandaVision, but you have to go see it. It is a great breakdown, especially if you're trying to recognize the flaws sometimes that happen when we're in emotional mind too much. The reason why I have a problem with this film is the logic jump between WandaVision and this film doesn't make sense to me. I don't feel like the way that it escalates to be here is enough based on how Wanda acted at the end of WandaVision. I feel like we're examining how much losing your children can really push you to be in an emotional state. There's a great line that Doctor Strange says,
dreams are windows into the lives of our multiversal selves.
I saw this at 20 minutes. A lot of times we ignore small little moments that are bothering us until we get over this threshold. And when we're over this threshold, we then lose the ability to think rationally at all. And until we can get below it again, we're never going to think outside of our moods, our feelings, and our urges. And that's the danger of shoving down your emotion. You would really want to try to process everything happening to you in the moment, so that way you don't do what Wanda does in this film. None of you can actually do what Wanda does. It's a movie, it's fiction. This film is an extreme example of what these skills are talking about to help you guys. This is all about Wanda's journey back into Wise Mind, but you have to start at the bottom to get back. Another flaw of emotional mind. It leaves gaps in our brains to process what we're doing in the moment, which is why when Wanda accidentally says,
"What have you brought America here?"
and Doctor Strange realizes he's never even told Wanda her name, that's when we find out the twist of Wanda actually being the one after her. But the reason why I stopped to point this out is she's so much in her emotional mind, little things slip you emotional mind when it comes to being logic and reason and the facts. If she was actually in Wise Mind, that wouldn't have happened because she would have both reason and emotion together. Obviously, it is what it is. But I wanted to point that out because it's an extreme example of how little things can get lost. I decided to stop it again at the end of the scene where Wanda gives the ultimatum for Doctor Strange to return to Tamatage and to give her America Chavez. And the reason why I stopped it here is because I've been talking about mindfulness and the ability to stay present in the moment and to not allow past trauma to affect us or future worry about what if possibilities. Because basically at this point, Wanda is thinking about all the years she's going to have to spend without Vision, without her family, and so it's affecting her and making her extremely emotional. She's also thinking about the past and becoming extremely depressed because Doctor Strange has been rewarded for the stuff that he did during Endgame. And in reality, if Doctor Strange hadn't given Thanos the Time Stone, Vision wouldn't have died. And the reason why I am highlighting this point is because when trauma happens, it's very hard through our triggers to get back to being able to be in the present moment and take everything as it comes and then let it go. Because right now, she's so much in her emotion that she has no presence of mind to be here in the moment. Only her future goals matter to her, nothing happening in the present. And this is kind of when we go into autopilot. A lot of this film, especially when it comes to Wanda, feels like somebody who went into autopilot to get what she wanted, which is the family that she basically had to have ripped from her 3 or 4 times over the course of these Avenger films that she's been in. I wanted to bring that back to last week when we talked about mindfulness, because that is an example of you're living too much in the past of basically somebody's death, and you should learn how to deal with those emotions so that way you can learn to be happy again in the present. Because it is hard to imagine years without that person, but it's only going to hurt you more if you're obsessed with those years without them instead of figuring out, what do I need now? What do I need to do to process this so that way I can still feel that pain, but every day I can manage it and it will become a little less than the day before until we finally learn to grieve and let go. And obviously, this is how Wanda thought there would be no film, but it's a great example of how mindfulness would have prevented all of this from happening. 30 minutes in, and I am back on this box picture because this is the part where Wanda confronts Steven and tells him to get out of her way because she is being reasonable by offering to let them all leave safely if they hand her over America Chavez. And the reason why to stop here and point this out is because, in a sense, if you watch this film, I was saying that slowly, if there's an arch and then there's a pointer in the middle, you'll see this film point from extreme reasonable or extreme emotional, but in the very middle is really the only spot where you should be, which is Wise Mind. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because basically you can tell because she's done all this stuff before acting, because she's shown what she can do by like coming on a cloud. She's like, she didn't have to announce her presence. She could have just burst in and just started attacking. We've seen, if you've watched the film, that she's capable of far more than what she does right here in Tamatage. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because the more you're an emotional mind, the further and further away you get from being reasonable. Which the irony is, she uses this line directly and she says,
This is me being reasonable.
when she's actually not. She's completely in her emotional mind. The reason why I wanted to acknowledge this, because in this film, the idea is there's Wanda, and then there's this other thing, the Scarlet Witch, which you can kind of think of as being her depression in this movie. The reason why I say that is because as Wanda disappears more, the more the Scarlet Witch goes off and does terrible things. It's kind of an example of you're trying to like talk to somebody you care about, because she does care about Steven, which is why she's trying to get him to just get out of her way, because she doesn't doesn't want to harm him, despite the fact that I mentioned about the time stone being the reason why this is dead. And the reason why I'm saying this is because as the film progresses, the more and more reason disappears. I feel like the more and more Wanda, the one I care about, the character that I loved, disappears. And I kind of feel like the reason why I had a problem with this film is like we completely jumped to Wanda being gone. And I feel like I needed to see that more than they showed us, kind of like the last remnants of her. And I feel like a lot of times when we're depressed, we feel like there's this dark cloud that has more power over us than we do, when really you are in control of your actions, you are in control of how you handle your trauma. And all you have to do is learn tools to help you navigate, to help you get back into wise minds so that you can work through the trauma and the pain rather than have the trauma and pain work against you and attack you and reduce you to somebody less than your true, authentic, happy, loving version that you have always been. I decided to stop it in the middle of Wanda breaking into Tamatage because I wanted to point out this one thing. A lot of times when we're falling into bad times and we're in our emotional selves, our instincts are to look out for our own interests, regardless of what other people feel or regardless of how they want us to be. And what happens is we slowly isolate and push everyone away until nobody's on our side anymore. Until this film, it was very clear that every single one of the Avengers and every single one of these sorcerers would have helped Wanda, would have worked with her, would have protected her, would have fought with her, and given their lives for her. But now she's pushing them all away. Obviously, in the sense of this film, she is like hurting them and killing them. But I thought it was a great example to like stop and be like, instead of releasing the pain and talking to somebody and letting others in, she's just pushing them all and basically solidifying her being on her own by not opening up, trying to figure out another solution, or like working through how she could have what she wanted in a better way with Steven. Or for instance, her kids she created, could she not learn to do that again in a better way? That's the only logic of this film that puzzled me, because Wanda, the reasonable person in wise mind, she chose to give up her power and give up her children in WandaVision, which is why this doesn't make sense to me, because she was selfless and she was being a hero and she gave up her children to release the people of Westview. That's why I was kind of confused, as like I understand the pain, but she did that because she knew it was the right thing to do. So there's no comfort there, and none of the Avengers who are supposedly her friends have gone and talked to her, tried to work that through with her. And I just wanted to point that out, is like that's one of the logic things that bother me. But the Darkhold magic thing is supposed to make you even worse than you were before, because it just wants to take you over and, destroy you from the inside. That's not really something we're talking about, because that's magic and we're in mindfulness and mental health.
Wanda, you have no children. They don't exist.
Oh, but they do. In every other universe. I know they do. Because I dream of them.
Oh, Wanda, painting yourself into a hole. Doctor Strange keeps trying to be rational and explain to her that she doesn't have children. They were fake. They were made up by the spell of this reality-bending spell. They're not real. And the thing is, in other universes, those Wandas gotta keep their children. So why does she have to suffer? And those kind of what-if statements are a great way for depression to sink in. And she even says she goes from happiness to extreme sadness, because dreams, once they're over, means that she's no longer with her children. There's a step missing, because I feel like that's what this dark cloud, the Darkhold, is keeping the reality from her, which is she can't be that other Wanda. There's only one you in your body. These other people, even though they look at you, they're different. And you have to remain present in yourself rather than comparing yourself to other people. Even if those people look like you still only have one life and you still only have oneself. You have to learn to respect that oneself and love that oneself even when bad things happen and you're going down and having a dark road. You have to be able to love yourself even then so you can come back from it. Otherwise, that's when we start to lose all our reasonable actions, so we just sink further into a depression and we start thinking irrationally and just digging ourselves into deeper holes rather than leaving ourselves a shallow area to come back from when depression hits. Instead, we're like making it fathoms deep, and it's a lot harder to come back from that, which is highlighted because Doctor Strange asks, and he's trying to poke at her logic and have her check the facts, which is what happens to that Earth's Wanda when you take over as their mother? mother. What are you going to do with her? He's trying to make her check the facts and actually think through everything that she's obviously neglecting to go through reasonably. 45 minutes in, we just got to memory lane when both Doctor Strange and America Chavez replay these memories from their past, which is good to remember and have happy memories and then remember these things that you did with people. But it's bad when we dwell on them for too long, especially when you compare the present moment to these past happy or bad moments. Because usually what's happening if you're reflecting on bad moments is your brain's trying to seek out and rationalize the feelings of being depressed. That way you can justify sinking further into depression rather than doing the work to get out of it. Which is why when Doctor Strange starts the images of Christine, the woman he loves, realizing the different things that got between him getting together with her and his present self, where he's trying to protect the world from these different things happening. Memories are great as long as we don't sink into them. It's a great way to reflect and be happy and reminisce with people, but don't sink into them as in a way that makes it seem like the present moment isn't as valid or as valuable as the past. Same thing with the future. Your future plans are amazing, but make sure you're not living for the future to eventually happen. For me, I have the goal of losing weight. I know I'm doing the different things to help me get there, but I can't wait to get there to choose to be happy. I need to make sure I'm finding happiness every day, because that's the one thing I don't like about weight loss videos is they skip over all that work you did as though you didn't deserve happiness until you lost all the weight. And that's not true. Every second that you work towards that is valuable because it got you to that end result. But you can't look at that journey as less than the end result. The journey matters as much as what the outcome is. We are at 109:43. This is just after Wanda has decided to do all these things in the name of getting her children back. And something that I wanted to point out is when we are depressed and when we are learning DBT skills for the first time, we go into extreme protective mode and we want to do these things to look out for our own self-interest, which is why she's doing all these things to get her kids back, because she wants to be happy and that's the only thing that she can think about. But what she's forgetting, and what I feel like a lot of people, especially when they're not dealing with their own trauma, forget, is that you can't put your own desire above other people's humanity. We are all deserving of love. We're all deserving of respect. We're all deserving of safety, security, and just being here in this world matters. We are all valuable. And the reason why I'm saying this is she's doing all these things in the eventual hope of returning to a place of happiness. But by doing that, she's forgetting all these things that when she stops what she's doing, eventually she'll go away from being on the emotional side and go past wise mind straight into being reasonable, where she'll remember all the things she did wrong and she'll start to feel really depressed because then she's in reason and she realized all the things that she glossed over to get what she wanted by hurting and killing and harming other people. You have to remember that if somebody's wronging you, to one, address them, especially if it's your friends or family or somebody that you want to have a continuous relationship with. Don't just cut them off. It's okay if you do that for a week or a week and a half as you figure out how to tell them what you need, or even I would say max a month, just so you have time to get away from being emotional and have the ability in wise mind to address what's going on with you in this relationship. So that way you can say, I need you to recognize that when you treat me this way, it makes me feel this way. And I understand. And so what I'm going to do is tell you what I need from you to not feel this way. And if you cannot change, if you're not willing to work with me or figure out how we can do this in our relationship, then we are going to have to change the way our relationship is. And it may go as far as no longer being there with each other, or being less friends, you see each other on occasions, but you still care about them. This goes for family too. It's anybody that's doing this, but I feel like a lot of times it's easier to ghost friends and family or people that have hurt you that you care about, but you'd rather not say it to them because it's easier to just not deal with it than to have to talk to them. And I feel like this works except for the people that you care about. And if you keep doing that, then you're going to actually make yourself upset because you're not dealing with the emotion behind why you need that conversation. What I just went over is a dear man skill, and I will go further into how to do that later. In this film, you see how much Wanda's hurting. You see how much she's hurt. You see why she wants this. It's not irrational for a mother to want her kids and to want them back and to hold them again. It's not wrong to have that desire or that emotion or have that thought cross your mind. What's wrong is the lengths of which she's going to get that. She's forgetting her happiness and her love. It is as important as somebody else's. In the balancing scale of life, there is no you mean more than somebody else or they mean more than you. We are all equal and we are all deserving of love, which means we all deserve to be treated with humanity and respect, and that is something that she's forgotten. Same thing can be said about Doctor Strange when he's talking to the Illuminati. He, the other Doctor Strange, not the one we're following, got the Darkhold because he wanted to stop Thanos. And when he wanted to stop Thanos, he started dreamwalking just like the Scarlet Witch is doing in this movie. And because he was doing that, what he did was caused an incursion, which basically meant that this other reality in the multiverse basically got completely destroyed because his desire to stop Thanos and theirs was less important than those people's reality and their life. And the reason why I point this out is because this extreme can happen on both sides. You can be so reasonable and so logical that you forget to think about how other people feel, how other people experience life, how other people go through and just live, because you're so wrapped up in the facts and the your reasons and your logic that you're forgetting that extra step of, okay, these are people, human people. How can I get what I want and do these things that I need to do in order to save the world from Thanos? The Illuminati basically tell him, Steven chose to go about it all by himself, didn't ask other people, didn't want other people to help. He just wanted to find that solution by himself. And if he had just spoken to other people, he would have been able to check the facts and get the fact that he shouldn't have been using the Darkhold. He shouldn't have done these things leading up to that incursion happening. But instead, he chose to be so much in reasonable mind, to be so much away from other people that he allowed this thing to happen, which is why that Doctor Strange no longer exists. Can I just say shout out to Professor Xavier, the only person in the Illuminati to actually be operating in wise mind. Again, they're going off of their version in a multiverse where everybody could be different in every universe of Doctor Strange, and just assuming because their Doctor Strange triggered an incursion, that means all of them will, and all of them will choose to do bad things. And the reason why I wanted to shout out to him is because if you listen to his logic, and he's like,
just because someone stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean they're lost forever. We will see what kind of Doctor Strange you are.
For that reason, he's like, we've given you the facts about what our Doctor Strange did. I'm giving this to you. I trust you. If you then choose to go against and follow the same pattern, then we will have a problem. But I believe in this scenario that you will do better. And that is a great example of somebody taking in what the problem is and then saying, I hear you. I validate that you do, like you're a different person, and I'm choosing this path. So I still view you as a person, and we can move forward from there. We are an hour and 20 minutes in. This is a scene where we're in 838 Wanda's mind, and it's this white room, and we find her, and she's beneath rubble in this little hovel, and Professor Xavier is trying to help her get out. We can sometimes bury ourselves so deep in our own depression that we forget where we lie. Like, I forget where Camron exists outside of my anxiety and my depression. It gets to the point where I feel like that is all I am. There is no Camron. It's just depression and anxiety. And that's not true. We have to learn to dive deep into our depression so we can find ourselves beneath all that baggage and that trauma. And when we can finally hear our own voices, we can start to dig ourselves out of it. But until then, we're just bearing it all down deep, far below all this rubble, which is literally a metaphor for what I'm talking about. We are at 148. This is the scene where Doctor Strange is giving a pep talk to America Chavez. And the reason why I stopped is because this is an example of wise mind. Because Wong wanted him to take her power before Wanda could, but this would be a reflection back to the beginning of the movie. But Strange was basically in the multiverse with the Illuminati, 838, learned that being so reasonable and to work alone is what the flaw is. You have to realize other people's humanity, other people's abilities, and their value in order to actually win. And that's kind of the flaw that Wanda was in, is she wasn't embracing the fact that everybody is worthy of life and that all the things that happened against you are what makes you you. Like all the bad things, all the happy things, all the things in between, they're what make you the version of yourself that you are now. And that's kind of what Doctor Strange is reminding America is like,
No, America, I've come here to tell you to trust yourself. Trust your power. That's how we stop her.
She just has been so afraid and so much in her own emotion to actually realize, like reasonably, in her reasonable mind, she has it in her. All she has to do is be wise and believe in herself and use those two in unison. And when she does, the perfect solution will present itself before her. Okay, everyone, we are at 1:51:08, and I decided to stop it because this is the part, like, literally it just ended when basically America Chavez takes Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, into 838's world to actually meet the kids that she's been doing anything in her power to have as her own children. And the reason why I love this scene is because we get so lost in our emotional minds that we think there's no coming back from it. We think that we're just lost to our negative thoughts and self-thinking. But the reason why I love the way this plays out is because, one, seeing the reality of what she wants made what she did to get there actually come through to her, especially when she says,
I would never hurt you. Never. I would never hurt anyone. I'm not a monster.
and then that phrase put her back in the reality of, well, if you never hurt anyone, why did you just hurt all these people to get here? There's the first line of reason, and it just keeps on coming. And then the thing that I love is she's going through this scene, slowly finding the flaws in what she was doing. But the thing I want to highlight in this scene is you have 616 Wanda with 838 Wanda. And instead of being angry, instead of like hating this witch who took over her body, she just stopped, took her in, and just saw somebody else who was hurting. And obviously she was getting possessed, so she could tell how Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, was feeling. And sorry, I'm getting emotional because when you are hurting and someone has hurt you, it is very hard to view the people who hurt you with compassion and this speaks on two levels, is because you have to remember other people's humanity, but you also have to remember your own. And so even though in this story there are two different Wandas, I look at it as a metaphor for sometimes we do things that are mistakes that make us feel bad about ourselves, that go against our values, and we judge ourselves so much it makes us feel like tar, like poison, just like disgusting individuals, and we tell ourselves this over and over again, especially when we don't understand the way we're treated by other people. And what I love about this scene is it's like if you look at everything you've done, you regret, and instead of judging yourself, you say, I see you, I validate you, I hear you. You're worthy of love because I love you. And the thing that you are most pained about, the fact that in this scenario, she is so like distraught and upset, the fact that she lost her kids. Like she doesn't know how to like handle life anymore. That's what's pushed her to do all these crazy things. And it's just the fact that she was like, I want you to know that even though you can't have them, that they are not gone. I will take care of them and they will never know what it's like not to be loved. I want you to have comfort in that. And that's just so beautiful to me. And then to go from there, there's also accountability. So after Wanda goes back into her own reality, the Scarlet Witch, she basically apologizes and tells Strange that she was wrong for what she was doing, and that the Darkhold did taint her. And then she took accountability for her own actions. And in this scenario, this is somebody that's a witch who's so powerful that like she can do these extreme thing. And so when you mess up, it's harder to recognize how to make up for it. And so her way of doing that was making sure that what the Darkhold did to her will never happen to somebody else. So she's going to destroy it. And then again, this is like a scenario in a film. This part we're going to ignore, but then she takes accountability and like takes her stuff out of the equation. I hope that that's not actually what happened. I do hope that somehow she escaped and somehow she will work through her guilt and somehow redeem herself of making sure that she protects people. Like she makes it her life mission to like protect the people that she hurt. And you know, you have to have accountability. You have to validate other people when you wrong them. And as long as you can do that, that's what matters. But the reason why I pointed that out is because she ends up supposedly taking her life, and that is not what we're talking about here. If you are struggling and that's something that you're considering, I do advocate you to reach out to a crisis center. 988 is a great thing that Minnesota has started doing, but it's something going across the country country that they're trying to have a crisis hotline on the 988 number, but also you can go across his crisis line. And again, you don't have to be a day of going to hurt yourself to call. If you're even thinking about it, and you, especially if you're planning, for sure call, and they will get you resources to help you, especially if you don't feel like you can reach out to friends or family or a therapist. If you're seeing one and you don't feel safe with them, definitely do that. But again, that's movie logic. I'm trying to help you with reality of you coming to terms with the fact that you matter and you are worthy of love, and you need to know that, not other people. You can't control them. I just want you to know that you're worthy of love. Whew, I paused it because Wanda reached her wise mind from the emotional side, and Doctor Strange just met his wise mind because he has been struggling with letting go of Christine and letting her know what she actually means to him. And what I love about this is because he's so reasonable and he's so logical, he's so like matter of fact, that he doesn't allow emotion to come in, and because of that he misses that side of living. And you need both sides to be in wise mind, but you need both sides to actually feel the whole human experience. And that's something that I think is a great thing for him to come to, is to finally reach a place where he can not only make reasonable decisions, but he can also have the forethought to remain emotional, attached to his humanity, so that way it's an equal part decision on both sides. But I also just love the fact that he tells this woman that he loves her in every universe, and he's just been too afraid to say that. I feel like that's a lot of people's experience, is we're afraid to tell people that we love them because it can make us feel like we'll be weak or they might reject us. And really, I feel like the more we tell people we care about them, the better, because we don't know when we're gonna get out of here. We don't know when the end of the road is. So you should never miss an opportunity to tell people that you care about, that you love them, because, you know, tomorrow's not guaranteed. Again, you can only control this present moment.
Wait.
A quick thing. This entire movie, Doctor Strange is making jokes about Wong becoming Sorcerer Supreme because he was blipped out of existence for 5 years. Validation is a huge thing for me, and I learned through DBT skills. You know, just because you validate somebody else doesn't mean you're telling them that their way of seeing things is correct. It just means that you see them, you understand where they're coming from, and you recognize that there's a disconnect happening, especially if this is during an argument. But like, you can recognize somebody and be there for them and like celebrate them without it having anything to do with you. It is okay to validate somebody, but for some reason it's very hard for a lot of people just to be like, I see you, I understand where you're coming from, I don't agree, or I really agree, I get where you're coming from, I'm gonna let you have that opinion and move on, but because I love you. And so I like the fact that he validated Wong finally by giving him a bow because he's a Sorcerer Supreme, and I thought that was really cool. Alright everyone, that's it for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I hoped that this video helped you along your own mental health journey. I'm glad I was able to point out the different stages of wise mind, and hopefully you'll be able to recognize when you're in reasonable mind opposed to emotional mind, and you can work towards being in the center, so that way you're able to make better decisions for you in your life going forward. Because in order to make the best decision, you want to make sure that you're not blocking out either side. You want to be making sure that you're there entirely. Next week, we'll be going over more DBT skills, followed by an interview coming here soon. With that, I will see you guys next time, and you guys have a wonderful time, and thank you for watching Show Up with Camron Gran, and remember to show up for yourself because you matter. As always, if you'd like, I would love it if you guys would subscribe, comment, follow, do all the things on all the podcast channels, leave a review. I love all of it, and I appreciate everybody who has subscribed already and been giving me a lot of comments and feedback. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. So don't forget to show up for yourself because you matter. Bye.